Hello, my name is Miss Lilbert, and today we're going to be looking at summative assessment, formative assessment, and remediation in a first grade classroom, specifically looking at math. To start, I would like to look at my September I Can statements. Now, these are what students should be able to do during my assessment, and I received these from my curriculum map. Now, if you look to the left, you can see that I used keywords. So these keywords will help me look and see that my students need to be able to solve, graph, count. And this will help me later on see if my students are actually reaching their I Can statements. Next, we're going to look at formative assessment. Formative assessment happens during the learning process and is done by the teacher to help the students achieve and grow throughout the year. When I did this, I did the sheet to the right, which has 3 parts. It has the students read the word, such as 10, 4, and 6. The next one has them read the number, such as 13, 7, and 1. And then the last part has them connect the two. So they're going to have to connect the word 7 to the number 7. And with this, I went ahead and for my assessment, I labeled it Part 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 goes with the first section. Part 2 goes with the second section, and 3 with the third. Now, if we look at this chart, the green did well and the blue struggled. In part 2, we can see that green, there's a lot of it. So that means that students did quite well while just looking at the number. But if we look at part 1, a lot struggled by saying the actual word, which I'm assuming threw them all off on part 3. Next, we're going to look at summative assessment. Summative assessment is done at the end of a unit to evaluate students' learning. And for my summative assessment, what I did was I had numbers 1 through 9, which are on the left of the screen, and I used a chart with questions 1 through 9. And some students didn't actually try on this, which isn't uncommon. So I went ahead and made that its own category, students who struggled and students who did well. Now, if we look at this, we can tell that students did very well with question 8. And if we see 8 is just base 10 blocks. And if we look at 3 per se, students didn't do so well. So we go up here. We see that there's a lot of 1s, but 9 has a lot of 1s too, so let's go up there and look. And it looks like not very many struggled, so I'm wondering if it's the layout of the 1s. Next, we're going to look at DOK, which is depth of knowledge. So to look at DOK, I went ahead and there's this circle chart here that is extremely useful. And for DOK, I went ahead and colored them, so color-coded. So DOK 1, so level 1 is yellow, level 2 is orange, level 3 is green, and level 4 is blue. Now if you look to the right, the level 1 that's yellow, it says find the sum. So in the level 1 DOK chart or circle, it should say identify or find in there. And once you're able to find that, which here it is, identify, that shows that students should be at that level. Level 2 shows how is it different or summarize. So students have to compare, or summarize. And this goes on for each level. Now if a student struggles in level 2, then they can get moved to level 1. And next we're going to look at the period. This is a model of student intervention. To start, we're going to start at the bottom, which is the core classroom instruction. Now this is about 80% normally. It's the traditional classroom, universal. And this is just the regular classroom. These students don't really struggle. They're just there to learn. The next is Tier 2, and these students work in small groups they're not necessarily needing individual help, but they are struggling a little. And they want to learn, but they just need a little push to help them. The next is intensive individual intervention. So these individuals have, they need to be pulled out. They most likely are going to get an IEP. These students will need somebody to guide them. Last thing we're going to look at is breaking things down into steps or remediation. So if you look to the right, we have my summative assessment that we looked at prior to. And to break this summative assessment down, I want to look at 5 ways to do so. To start, we could break down the idea of the base 10 blocks. So if you remember me discussing, so let's say we had some students struggle with 8, which it does look like we did, then we can actually break these down individually so the students are able to count the blocks and see that there are 10 total. The next, we can actually get base 10 blocks so students can have hands-on experience with it. Students can also line up the 1s and the 10s to help, because if you remember earlier, students struggled with 6 but not necessarily 7, because 7 is lined up where 6 is not. The next, we can run through each question as a whole class to make sure everybody as a class understands the sheet. And finally, we can work with individual students that may struggle, such as the people that did struggle with 8 and they're still not getting it. And that is the end of my presentation. Thanks for watching.